In this video, I am once again making backpacking gear that almost anyone can create at home. And this time, I'm focusing on winter gear.
This is cozy.
Ooh, buddy, so good. At the end of this video, I'll show you how to make this. Ta-da! But first, we're starting nice and easy with DIY wet wipes.
This is my show, gosh darn.
Okay, so why are these DIY wet wipes a winter backpacking DIY? Well, it's really important to clean dirt and oils off of your skin before you go to sleep, particularly in the wintertime, because that dirt and oil can actually prevent your body from properly insulating. Oh, we have a cat on the table. Hold for cat, being a cat. Now, the downside of traditional wet wipes is that they tend to be pretty heavy because they're just like packed full of liquid, but these dehydrated wet wipes are super lightweight and easy to pack. This is actually just a dehydrated existing wet wipe, so it's not even really that much of a DIY so much as it is just knowing how to properly dehydrate these. In order to do that, we are gonna move to the kitchen.
Oh my God.
Now, to make these dehydrated wet wipes, you need wet wipes.
You don't say.
I have here some Wet Ones sensitive skin hand and face wipes, but you can literally use whatever wet wipes you want. All we're gonna do is take these wet wipes, lay them out on this baking sheet with this little drying rack on it. Now, all you do is leave these out overnight. That is literally it. In the morning, and even after just a couple of hours, these will be totally dry and much lighter and easier to store in your pack. So I'm gonna let these Wet Ones sit out, but with a little bit of movie magic, I'm gonna bring in the ones that I dehydrated last night. Okay, poof! So now I have my pre-dried wet wipes here on this baking sheet. These are completely dried out. They essentially just feel like dryer sheets or, I don't know, like little pieces of fabric. And I could just store these exactly as is, but what I will probably do is go ahead and cut them in half so that I wind up with 6 little half sheets like this one. Now keep in mind that this wet wipe is dehydrated, like there's no more water or moisture in it, but all of the cleaning agents that were in this are still there. We just need to basically activate them with some water. Just gonna get a couple drops on there, wiping off my skin and cleaning off any dirt. Most important thing, if you are using these, make sure you carry them out of the backcountry, store them in your trash, and dispose of them in a landfill when you get home. Okay, bitch. Now, if you're looking at this DIY and you're like, okay, why the heck would I do this to save like nominal weight? Like what the heck is the point? I totally hear you, but what I'm gonna do is actually weigh these dried wet wipes and weigh the wet wipes to show you the difference in weight. All right, first, starting with the wet ones, these 3 weigh 13 grams, which is really not that heavy. My dry ones weigh 3 grams, 4 grams. I get that for some people, 10 grams might not be that big of a deal, but it does make a huge difference in the long run. And I will say that these are also way easier to store totally dried out than they are to store wet like this. Oh my gosh, this cat. For our next DIY, I'm going to show you how to take an old Amazon bubble mailer and turn it into an insulated pouch for your phone or a battery pack. For this DIY, you are going to need an old bubble mailer, such as this one that I got when we did our Amazon budget video, some waterproof duct tape, and a pair of scissors. It's also a good idea to have the item that you are trying to make the pouch for at hand, such as my phone. So an insulated pouch is really helpful in the wintertime because batteries tend to drain a lot faster when it is cold outside. So having some way to keep your phone or a battery pack warm will prevent the batteries from draining super, super quickly. I opted to actually get this waterproof tape. And the reason I got this tape is that I thought it would be kind of cool to be able to make this pouch essentially waterproof, or at least water repellent, especially because I live in a part of the world where wintertime means lots and lots of rain. So the first thing that we are going to do is actually cut open this bubble mailer so that I have just one totally flat sheet to work with. So I'm just gonna cut down these 2 edges, boop, so I can unfold this and have one sheet. All right. Now I cut off the edges. Oh, shoot. Okay, did a little bit of trimming here. I cut off the edges, but I didn't quite cut all the way through in a few spots. Boop. There we go. Boom. So now I have one big sheet of bubble mailer. Okay, so I am making this insulated pouch for my phone, and I really just want to make this big enough for me to be able to slide my phone into this little insulated pouch and then like close a flap on the top so it stays covered and warm. Which I just realized I forgot to mention one of our supplies. You will also need hook and loop stickies. Now I'm realizing I want to do this direction instead. Boop, because I know that I will personally be really frustrated if the text is sideways and not right way up.
I'm kind of a perfectionist.
So now the fold is lined up with the bottom edge of my phone, and the top part of this bubble mailer is lined up with the top edge of my phone. And all I'm gonna do is make sure that I have enough extra hanging over to create a little flap when I like fold this closed. Let's see, that's a flap, mark it right there. Boom. I can take that mark that I've made using my scissors and just cut straight across this bubble mailer. All right, we're gonna set this piece aside. Now I'm gonna take this and make sure that it fits. Boom, that is perfect. Now the next step is just to cut the excess off on the sides to make my little phone pouch. So I'm gonna like push this down on the sides, boop, boop, boop. You see it's pressing from the top of my phone down. Now, very useful, I can still see those fold lines from my phone, and those are what I'm gonna use to cut. So we're just using the bubble grid as a guideline. Bam. All right, that's one side done. Now we're gonna do the other side. It's not this one, it's this outside line, boom. So now, if my measurements were correct, I should be able to place my phone in here, fold this up, and have my edges neatly meet. Okay, this waterproof tape is kind of annoying to work with, so bear with me. You can see there's this blue backing on here. That blue backing is what is like needs to be peeled off so we can stick the tape down. Before I peel that blue backing off, I just wanna see how much tape I'm gonna need. So I'm taking my waterproof tape and my phone pouch, and I just wanna line that tape up to make sure that I will have enough to fully seal the open side of my pouch. I'm gonna peel off this blue plastic backing. Alrighty, here we go. Lay that tape down, fold this pouch up, and let's stick on our tape. Backing. Pressing down. Now, we do the other side. Peel off that blue backing, berm, capture that little edge, then peel off the rest of the blue backing, fold our tape over. Boom! So now we have both sides of our pouch sealed. I just wanna put some pressure on this tape and some heat, make sure that it stays totally stuck down. So I use these little hook and loop or Velcro dots really frequently for craft projects, but if you don't have something like this, you can definitely just use like peel and stick Velcro strips. In order to properly line these up, I'm going to take one of them and put it on the flap. So kind of like right towards the edge, boop. I'm gonna take the other side of my Velcro dot, and I'm actually just going to stick that to the one that I just applied to the flap, and then I'll peel off this plastic backing, press down on our Velcro dot, and now if I carefully unhook the top one, my Velcro is perfectly lined up now. Just like that. That is an insulated pouch. Let's move on to our next DIY. Our next DIY is an easy, homemade powdered hot cocoa mix that requires only 3 ingredients and has the benefit of being enhanced by electrolytes. To make this hot cocoa, you will need instant dry whole milk, unsweetened cocoa powder, and 1 stick of LMNT chocolate salt. To measure out my hot chocolate powder, I am going to need a 1/4 cup measuring cup, and I'm actually just going to put my cocoa powder into this plastic bag here. 1 packet of LMNT chocolate salt will make 2 servings of hot cocoa, so I'm essentially just mixing 2 servings of this cocoa mix into this plastic bag. We are going to start with a 1/2 cup of powdered whole milk, so that's a 1/4 cup, and a 1/2 cup, 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, and 1 stick of LMNT chocolate salt. That is it. So here I have my instant powdered hot cocoa mix. I'm just gonna seal this bag up so I can shake it really well and get everything blended. So in this bag, we have that 1/2 cup of powdered milk, 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, and 1 stick of LMNT electrolytes. So now that I've shown you how to make this hot cocoa mix, let's go ahead and add some hot water to it so you can see how it comes together. To make 1 12-ounce serving, I need 6 tablespoons of mix. I'll be honest, when I'm at camp, I'm not gonna measure out 6 tablespoons. I'm just gonna measure out like 5 heaping sporkfuls. So we're gonna do that here. Where's my spork? Oh no, where's my spork? Sporky? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 sporkfuls. All right, our water is boiling, so let's make our hot cocoa. Fill this cup. Now time for the taste test. It's still a little too hot, so I'm gonna wait for it to cool down. While I wait for my hot chocolate to cool down, now is a perfect time to mention the sponsor of today's video, which is, of course, LMNT electrolyte powder. I struggle a lot with dehydration when I'm hiking and backpacking, and while it often feels like it's worse in the summer when I'm super hot and I'm sweating, the winter time is actually when I find it hardest to get enough water and get enough electrolytes. That is, until I discovered LMNT. LMNT is an electrolyte powder that has 1,000 milligrams of sodium and no added sugar. It's also really, really delicious. The reason in particular that LMNT works so well for this hot cocoa mix is that they actually make this chocolate salt stick. And so this just adds perfectly into your hot cocoa. If you don't want to go through the process of making this hot cocoa mix like I just showed you, you can honestly just add LMNT chocolate salt to like a hot cup of water at camp. And this stuff is really delicious all on its own. Now I just used LMNT's chocolate salt flavor, but LMNT actually has a chocolate medley that's out right now. And that includes flavors like chocolate mint, chocolate raspberry, and chocolate chai. So if you really wanted to elevate your hot cocoa mix, you could add any one of those flavors in instead of the chocolate salt and probably come up with something that's even more delicious. So if you wanna try LMNT, go to the link below, which is drinklmnt.com/MirandaGoesOutside. If you place an order there, you will get a free sample pack of 8 of LMNT's most popular flavors. Okay, it's probably cooled down by now. Super good. It's just like a perfectly salty, slightly sweet hot cocoa. We're on to our last 2 DIYs, and before I show you how to make this, ta-da! I'm going to show you how to turn a cheap fleece blanket into a warm sleeping bag liner. To make this DIY, you will need an inexpensive, lightweight fleece blanket, and a sewing machine or enough patience to hand sew this. So I got my cheap fleece blanket at Walmart. It cost me $3.44, but you might also be able to find a really inexpensive and thin blanket like this at a thrift store. The reason that I keep saying cheap fleece blanket is that this is going to work best if you are using a really thin fleece. So if you look at this, you can see that this is like really, really thin, and that is actually what we want. Because I'm using this inside a sleeping bag as a liner, and I'm using it to add just a little bit of extra warmth, I actually want the really thin material that I get from this inexpensive blanket. So the first step in making this sleeping bag liner is to measure how much fabric I need. And we're gonna do that by lying down on it and wrapping ourselves up in it like a burrito. All right, I'm gonna lie down on this. So if I put my feet right here, and then lie down. Okay, so at first I was thinking that I would like pin this fabric around myself and then sew it to fit me right, like to be the right size. But it actually seems like it's kind of the perfect size right now. If you're any bigger of a person than I am, if you're taller or if you're wider, then you probably want to use 2 of these blankets and then just sew the 2 sides together. So what I have done is taken that 60-inch side and used that as the length of my liner, and then I have folded over the 50-inch side in half like this. So what I wind up with is a folded piece of fabric that is 60 inches long by 25 inches wide. Now, first thing that I'm going to do is just sew down this open 60-inch side so I have a tube. This blanket has this little like wrapped hem, which is functionally useless because fleece does not fray. So I'm actually going to sew on the inside of that. So we are going to use about a 1-inch seam allowance. And rough. So this is where I've sewn those edges together. So we're just staying right on the inside of this like faux hem thing they've put on it and just stitching it together with a zigzag stitch. That zigzag stitch allows it to still have a little bit of stretch. More sewing! There we go. So now I have sewn up that long side of my blanket and I have a really big tube. Wow. Okay, now in theory, you could just stop here. You've basically done it. You've made a sleeping bag liner, but technically to make this a finished sleeping bag liner, I would want to close up the foot box. Look, all of a sudden, it's not just a sleeping bag liner. Look, it's also a skirt. It's a dress. It's a scarf.
The Vanity Fair or Vogue magazine, here we come.
So the next thing I'm going to do is just round out the bottom of this liner so it's more mummy shaped. It'll just help it fit better inside my bag. And to do that, I am going to find the middle line roughly, which is like right there. Mark that. And then I'm gonna go up like whatever the distance would be, like basically up to my knee, you know? It's like what I'm going up to. And then I'm just going to make a curve going from that point down to the center. So I am truly just kind of guesstimating this. It does not need to be perfect. And then going from that middle line, drawing a curve up to the side. So this is that white line that I'm following. It's really faint. The first thing I want to do is kind of find where that line connected with this seam that I made along the long edge. And that's where I want to start sewing. Boom! So you can see here that really faint green line. That is the hem line for our foot box, where I sewed right on top of that chalk mark that we made, or mostly right on top of the chalk mark.
I'm kind of a perfectionist.
Okay, really fast before I cut off this excess fabric on the outside of our seam, I just want to put myself in this and make sure everything is fitting okay. In we go. Oh yeah. Oh, that's nice. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Hooray! Okay, now before I call this finished, I do need to cut off that extra fleece that's on the bottom and then reinforce this top stitch. So I just put a couple extra stitches in there just to really tack down that seam. So now we have something pretty strong up top there. There you have it. A mummy-shaped, super warm fleece sleeping bag liner from a $3.44 blanket. This is cozy and warm. Now let's move on to our final DIY. Cozy! It is time for our final and maybe the most exciting DIY. Really quick, if you notice that it is bright outside and my hair is a little bit shorter, you're not crazy. I had to take a little bit of a break, but I am now back at my DIY table to show you how to make insulated booties from an old insulated jacket. Woo! To make these insulated booties, you will need a thrift store synthetic jacket or just an old jacket you're willing to cut up, a pair of sharp scissors, pins, a marker, and a sewing machine. Okay, so the synthetic insulated jacket that I'm using for this is one that I picked up at my local thrift store. It was super stained and that just kind of makes it perfect for this project. It is very important that you use a synthetic insulated jacket for this project, and here's why. If you take a look at the inside of this jacket, this is what the insulation looks like. You can see it is almost like a little sheet of kind of like poofy insulating stuff. That is synthetic insulation. If you are using a down insulated jacket, this is just gonna be a bunch of little feathers that are flying out of the jacket as soon as you start cutting and sewing. You can basically use any size jacket that you want, but I would recommend using a size that is close to your own size. The reason for that is that you need to use the sleeve of the jacket to make your booties. Because this process is a little bit complicated, I'm going to show you what the final product looks like first before we get to sewing and cutting. Here is what we're going to end up making. Booty! So this is the little synthetic insulated booty that I made from the sleeve of this jacket. This is the cuff on the sleeve, and then I've cut a little opening here that makes it easier to get on my foot. If I turn it inside out, I've sewn this little curve here to create the foot shape. So now you've seen what we are working towards. Now let me show you how to make it.
Booty, 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 rocking everywhere. Booty, 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 rocking everywhere. Rocking everywhere. I found you, synthetic booty.
So the very first thing you'll want to do before you start cutting or sewing is turn your entire jacket inside out. So this is the right side of my jacket. I've turned the whole thing inside out. So if you look at the jacket, you can probably see that the sleeve cuff is a lot smaller, even when it's stretched. So we essentially just need to open it up to a place where I can easily slide it over my heel. If by some happenstance, this is plenty big and you can just slide your foot in here, then you don't need to do this step. But for most of us, you're going to need to make this a little bit wider. What I want to do first is actually see how much I need to widen this opening for me to be able to put it on my foot. I'm keeping the seam of the sleeve on top here, and then I'm gonna put my foot into it through the neck of the jacket. So now I've shoved my leg into the sleeve of this jacket, and at this point, I kind of can't get the sleeve any further on my foot. And I'm now gonna look and see where my heel is to my instep. That's the widest part of my foot. So I can mark right here, and I know that I need to cut this seam down to there. Most important thing, make sure you are keeping the seam of your jacket on top of your foot, okay? There's my heel, straight line. I'm going to mark a little line. This is the mark I've just made. We're gonna start at the cuff. We're gonna stitch down to that mark, stitch across, turn, and stitch back up the other side. And then snip, snip. One really important thing, make sure you're only sewing through one side of your sleeve. Do not sew the sleeve together. So, if you take a look here, you can see the two new stitch lines that we created make this little notch kind of in the sleeve. So we can cut between those two stitch lines to be able to make this opening bigger. It's time to cut. Don't cut too far. Make sure you just cut to right before that bottom stitch. So now we have our wider opening. I should be able to easily now put my foot in through the opening of this sleeve so we can start constructing our booty. Heck yeah, that is awesome. What I also like about this is I can now kind of roll it down a little. It's like a little sock. What we need to do now is shape the booty so we know where to sew. So what I'm gonna do is put my foot on the ground. You can put some full body weight on it if you need to mark where your toe is gonna be. I'm going to pull the top part down, and then I want to pin this jacket at the top of my foot, leaving about a 1/2 inch of space between my toe and where I'm gonna put the pin. And now we're gonna do the same thing going around my foot, trying to keep it as symmetrical as possible. And that is our shaped booty. We're ready to sew. Boop. Now what I wanna do really fast is actually just put this on my foot, make sure that my seams look good, make sure that everything is still working. We're just doing one final check before we slice the jacket away. Feels pretty good. Time to cut it away. Sharp scissors. Now when I cut this, I am going to give myself about a 1/2 inch of allowance for where I'm cutting. So I'm cutting about a 1/2 inch away from the seam that I've just sewed. Ta-da! Time to turn this booty right side out. And there you have it, your very own synthetic insulated booty. Should we try them on? Wow, so cozy. Y'all know I love an insulated booty, and I think this is just such a cool way to make them yourself. So that is the last of my winter backpacking DIYs. I love making DIY backpacking gear, so if you liked this video, make sure you let me know in the comments below. And I also wanna know which one of these DIYs you are most likely to make. As always, if you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you outside. Bye! Oh God, bananas.
What was that?
I said bananas.
Oh God, bananas!
That's chaos. Bye!